For 34 years, I kept a secret from my daughter. 34 years of half-truths and careful silences. 34 years of changing the subject when she asked questions. 34 years of watching her build a fantasy in her head about a man who didn't deserve her admiration. Her father. The man who left us when she was 2 years old. The man who chose another life, another family, another version of himself that didn't include the little girl with pigtails and big brown eyes who cried for him every night for a year. I told myself I was protecting her. Well, that's what mothers do, isn't it? We protect our children from the ugly truths, the painful realities, the parts of life that might break their hearts. So when Josephine asked about her daddy, I smiled and said he was a complicated man. When she asked why he left, I said sometimes adults make choices that don't make sense to children. When she asked if he ever loved her, I swallowed the truth like broken glass and said, "Of course he did, sweetheart. Of course he did." I lied. For 34 years, I lied to my daughter to protect her from the truth about who her father really was. And then, on her 36th birthday, she found out anyway. Not from me, from a letter. A letter her father wrote before he died. A letter that told her everything I'd spent her whole life hiding. She came to my house that evening. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, that letter clutched in her trembling hands, and she looked at me with eyes I barely recognized. "Mama," she said, her voice cracking, "is this true? Is any of this true?" I could have lied again. One more lie to add to the pile. One more half-truth to keep the peace. But I was 70 years old. I was tired of carrying secrets. And my daughter was standing in front of me, her whole understanding of her life shattered at her feet. So I told her the truth. All of it. And nothing between us has ever been the same. Now, I know some of you are already judging me. You're thinking I should have told her sooner. Or you're thinking I should have kept quiet forever, taken the secret to my grave, let her keep her illusions. But life isn't that simple, is it? Motherhood isn't that simple. The choices we make to protect our children, they're never black and white. They're messy and complicated and full of consequences we can't predict. So let me tell you my story. Let me tell you why I lied and why I finally told the truth and what happened after. Then you can decide for yourself if I did the right thing. I need to take you back to the beginning so you can understand how I ended up keeping a secret that would shape my daughter's entire life. My name is Vivian Marie Johnson. I was born in 1953 in a small town in Louisiana, the kind of place where the summers were so hot and humid you could barely breathe, and everybody knew each other's business whether you wanted them to or not. My mama was a seamstress who worked out of our front room, mending clothes and making dresses for the women in town. My daddy worked at the sugar refinery until his back gave out, and then he did odd jobs around the neighborhood, fixing fences, painting houses, whatever would put food on our table. We didn't have much, but we had each other. That's what Mama always said. We had love, and we had faith, and we had a roof over our heads. In her mind, that was enough. I was the youngest of 6 children, 4 boys and 2 girls, with me coming last like an afterthought. By the time I came along, Mama was 41 years old and thought her childbearing days were long behind her. I was what folks called a surprise blessing, though I suspect there were times Mama found me more surprising than blessing. Being the youngest meant being overlooked. My brothers were loud and took up space. My sister Charlene was pretty unpopular and always had some boy calling on her. And me? I was quiet, bookish, the kind of child who disappeared into corners with the novel while everyone else was living their lives. I learned early that being invisible had its advantages. You could watch people, study them, understand things about them that they didn't even understand about themselves. But being invisible also meant being lonely. It meant feeling like you didn't quite belong anywhere, like you were always on the outside looking in. That loneliness followed me into adulthood. It made me hungry for connection, desperate for someone to finally see me. And that desperation is what led me straight to Raymond Carter. I met Raymond in the summer of 1975 when I was 22 years old. I'd moved to New Orleans after high school, determined to make something of myself beyond our little town. I was working as a secretary at a law firm downtown, typing letters and answering the phones and dreaming of a bigger life. Raymond walked into that office one afternoon looking for a lawyer to help with some business matter. He was 28 years old, tall and handsome, with smooth dark skin and a smile that could light up a room. He wore a nice suit and carried himself like a man who knew he was going places. When he looked at me, really looked at me, not through me the way most people did, something shifted in my chest. "Well, hello there," he said, leaning against my desk with that devastating smile. "I don't believe we've met. I'm Raymond Carter." "Vivian," I managed to say, my voice coming out softer than I intended. "Vivian Johnson." "Vivian," he said my name like he was tasting it, savoring it. "That's a beautiful name for a beautiful woman." I should have known right then. I should have recognized the smoothness, the practiced charm, the way his compliments rolled off his tongue like he'd said them 1,000 times before. But I was 22 and lonely and desperate to be seen. So instead of being cautious, I was flattered. Instead of asking questions, I just smiled and let myself fall. Raymond courted me like I was the most precious thing he'd ever encountered. He brought me flowers every week, not the cheap ones from the corner store, but real flowers from the nice florist on Magazine Street. He took me to restaurants I could never have afforded on my own, places with white tablecloths and candles and menus in French. He told me I was special, different, not like other women he'd known. I believed every word. Looking back now, I can see all the red flags I missed. The way he never talked about his family. The way he'd disappear for days at a time with vague explanations about business trips. The way he always paid in cash and never let me see where he lived. But I didn't want to see the red flags. I wanted to believe in the fairy tale. I wanted to believe that this handsome, successful man had chosen me. Invisible, overlooked Vivian out of all the women he could have had. So, I closed my eyes to the warning signs and let myself fall deeper and deeper in love. 6 months after we met, I found out I was pregnant. I remember the exact moment I realized. I was standing in the bathroom of my tiny apartment, staring at myself in the mirror, doing the math in my head. My period was 3 weeks late. My breasts were tender. I'd been sick every morning for the past week. I was terrified. This was 1976. Unmarried mothers weren't as common as they are now, especially not in the Black community, especially not in the South. Having a baby out of wedlock meant shame, judgment, whispers behind your back at church. But underneath the terror, there was something else, a tiny spark of joy. Because maybe, just maybe, this baby would be the thing that made Raymond commit, the thing that turned our relationship into something real, something permanent, something I could count on. I told him that evening, sitting across from him at a little cafe near the river. "Raymond," I said, my hands trembling around my coffee cup, "I have something to tell you." His face went still, careful, like he already knew what was coming. "I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was the longest of my life. I watched emotions flicker across his face. Surprise, calculation, something that might have been fear. Then he smiled, that same devastating smile that had hooked me from the beginning. "Well," he said, "that's wonderful news, baby, just wonderful." He reached across the table and took my hands. He told me everything would be fine. He told me he'd take care of everything. He told me he loved me. And fool that I was, I believed him. We got married 3 weeks later. It wasn't the wedding I dreamed of as a girl. No white dress, no church full of family, no reception with dancing and cake. Just a quick ceremony at the courthouse with 2 strangers pulled off the street to serve as witnesses. He said we'd have a real wedding later once he got some business sorted out. He said he wanted to give me the celebration I deserved, just not right now. Later never came. But at the time, I didn't care. I was Mrs. Raymond Carter. I had a ring on my finger and a baby in my belly and a husband who told me he loved me. That was enough. We moved into an apartment on the edge of the city. It wasn't fancy. 2 bedrooms, a kitchen that was barely big enough to turn around in, and windows that let in the cold in winter and the heat in summer. But it was ours, our first home together. I decorated it the best I could. Hung curtains I sewed myself, put up pictures I found at thrift stores, made it into a place where our baby could grow up feeling loved. Raymond was gone a lot. Business, he said. He was building something important, something that would give us a better life. I just needed to be patient. So I was patient. I worked at the law firm until I couldn't hide my belly anymore, and then I stayed home and waited. Waited for Raymond to come home at night, waited for him to tell me about his day, waited for him to be the husband and father I believed he could be. Our daughter was born on April 15th, 1977. Josephine Marie Carter. 7 pounds, 3 ounces, with a full head of dark curly hair and the loudest cry the nurses said they'd ever heard. She came into this world demanding attention, and she hasn't stopped since. When I held her for the first time, I felt something I'd never felt before. A love so fierce and overwhelming it took my breath away. A determination to protect this tiny person from everything bad in the world. I looked at her perfect little face, and I made a promise. "I will never let anyone hurt you," I told her silently. "I will never let anyone make you feel invisible the way I felt invisible. You will always know that you are loved." I meant that promise with every fiber of my being. I just didn't know how hard it would be to keep. Raymond held Josephine once, the day she was born. He looked at her with an expression I couldn't read. Pride, maybe? Or fear? Or something else entirely? And then handed her back to me. "She's beautiful," he said, "just like her mama." And then he left. Said he had to take care of some things. Said he'd be back later. He didn't come back for 3 days. That was when the pattern started to become clear. Raymond was never fully present. Even when he was physically in our apartment, his mind was somewhere else. He'd hold Josephine for a few minutes, then hand her back and disappear into the other room. He'd eat the dinners I cooked without comment, then leave for meetings that lasted until the early hours of the morning. He started staying away longer. One night became 2. 2 became 3. Sometimes a whole week would pass without me seeing my husband. I made excuses for him, to my family, to the few friends I had, to myself. Raymond was working hard, Raymond was building a future for us. Raymond was under a lot of pressure. I was so busy making excuses that I almost missed what was right in front of my face. The signs were everywhere once I started looking. The receipts in his pockets from restaurants I'd never been to, the faint smell of perfume on his shirts, perfume I didn't wear. The phone calls he'd take in the other room, his voice low and soft in a way it never was with me. And then one evening when Josephine was about 18 months old, I found the photographs. Raymond had left his briefcase at home by accident. I wasn't snooping. I was looking for a pin. But when I opened it, a stack of photographs spilled out onto the floor. Photos of Raymond with another woman, a pretty woman with light skin and long hair, smiling at the camera with her arm around my husband. Photos of them at restaurants, at parties, at what looked like a family gathering. And photos of 2 children, a boy and a girl, maybe 6 and 4 years old. Children who looked just like Raymond. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely hold the photographs. I turned one of them over. On the back, in handwriting I didn't recognize, were the words Marcus, Angela, and Daddy at Angela's birthday party, May 1978. May 1978? 2 months ago? While I was home alone with our daughter, wondering where my husband was, he was at a birthday party with his other family. His other family. The words didn't make sense. They couldn't make sense. Because if Raymond had another family, that meant... The front door opened. Raymond walked in whistling, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. He saw me standing there with the photographs in my hands, and his face went white. "Vivian," he said, "baby, I can explain." But there was nothing to explain. The photographs told me everything I needed to know. My husband had another wife, other children, a whole other life that had nothing to do with me and Josephine. Our marriage was a lie. It had been a lie from the very beginning. What followed was the worst night of my life. Raymond didn't deny it. He couldn't. The evidence was right there in my hands. So instead, he did something worse. He justified it. "You don't understand," he said, pacing around our tiny living room like a caged animal. "Dolores and I, we've been together since high school. She's the mother of my children. I couldn't just leave her." "So you married me instead?" My voice came out as a whisper. I couldn't make it any louder. "You married me, knowing you already had a wife?" "Our marriage isn't legal," he admitted, not meeting my eyes. "I never divorced Dolores, so technically, he was talking about technicalities while my whole world crumbled around me. "What about Josephine?" I asked. "What about our daughter?" Something flickered across his face. Guilt, maybe, or maybe just annoyance. "I'll take care of her," he said. "Financially, I mean. I'm not a monster, Vivian. I'll make sure she has what she needs." "She needs a father." "She has a father. I'm her father. That doesn't change." "But you lied to us. You lied to me. Our whole relationship has been built on lies." Raymond sighed like I was being unreasonable, like I was the one causing problems. "Look, I never meant for any of this to happen. I met you and I got caught up. You were so sweet, so trusting. I couldn't help myself." So trusting. He said it like it was a flaw, like my trust was something he'd exploited, a weakness he'd taken advantage of. "I want you to leave," I said. The words came out flat, emotionless. I'd gone somewhere beyond anger, beyond pain. I was numb, completely numb. "Vivian, let's talk about this. Leave now before I do something I regret." He left that night with a suitcase full of clothes and a promise to send money for Josephine. The The money came sporadically for about 2 years. Then it stopped. And Raymond? He disappeared from our lives like he'd never been there at all. Josephine was 2 years old when her father abandoned us. She was too young to understand what was happening. All she knew was that Daddy used to be there sometimes, and then he wasn't. She toddled to the door whenever she heard footsteps in the hallway, convinced it was him coming home. "Daddy?" she'd asked, her little face full of hope. "No, baby," I'd say, scooping her up. "Not Daddy, just the neighbors." She cried for him. Every night for almost a year, she cried for him. She'd wake up calling his name, confused about where he was, why he wasn't there to tuck her in. Those were the hardest nights of my life, holding my sobbing daughter, unable to explain why her father had left, unable to make the pain go away. I could have told her the truth. Even at 2, I could have started laying the groundwork, could have said, "Daddy did bad things, Daddy isn't coming back." But I looked at her little face, so innocent, so full of love for a man who didn't deserve it, and I couldn't do it. I couldn't break her heart any more than it was already broken. So I started telling the half-truths. I'd say, "Daddy had to go away for work. Daddy lives far away now. Daddy loves you very much." I told myself I was protecting her, giving her something to hold on to, letting her keep her image of a loving father who just couldn't be with us right now. But looking back, I wonder if I really was protecting myself from the shame of having been fooled, protecting myself from having to admit that I'd brought a child into the world with a man who was already committed to another family. Either way, the lies began. And once you start lying, it's so hard to stop. I rebuilt my life slowly, painfully, one day at a time. I couldn't afford our apartment anymore on just my salary, so Josephine and I moved back to my hometown, back to the little house where I'd grown up, where my mama still lived, now widowed and lonely and grateful for the company. It was humbling coming home like that. All the dreams I'd had about making something of myself in the big city reduced to a single mother crawling back to where she started. But Mama didn't judge me. She just opened her arms and held me while I cried, then took her granddaughter and said, "Well, I always did want more babies in this house." We made it work. I got a job at the local school, working in the front office, and I tried to be both mother and father to my little girl. Tried to give her everything she needed, tried to fill the hole that Raymond had left behind. But some holes can't be filled. Some absences are too big to cover over. Josephine grew up asking about her daddy. At first, the questions were simple. Where is he? When is he coming back? Why doesn't he live with us? I gave her simple answers. He lives far away. He can't visit right now. He sends his love. Lies. All of them lies. As she got older, the questions got harder. Why doesn't Daddy call me on my birthday? Why doesn't he come to my school plays? Does he know I won the spelling bee? Doesn't he want to see me? Every question was a knife in my heart. Every answer was another brick in the wall of lies I was building between my daughter and the truth. Daddy's very busy with his work. Daddy doesn't have a phone where he is. I'm sure Daddy would be proud of you. Of course he wants to see you, he just can't right now. I became an expert at deflection, an expert at changing the subject, an expert at giving Josephine just enough to keep her satisfied without ever telling her the real story. And Josephine, beautiful, trusting Josephine, believed every word. She built a fantasy in her head about her father, a man who loved her but couldn't be with her, a man who thought about her all the time, a man who would come back someday when circumstances allowed and sweep her up in his arms and tell her he'd missed her every single day. That fantasy sustained her through childhood, through adolescence, through young adulthood. It gave her something to hold on to, something to believe in. And I let her believe it, because the truth seemed so much worse. How could I tell my daughter that her father had another family, that he'd never really wanted us, that she was just a complication in his already complicated life? How could I explain bigamy to a 5-year-old, to a 10-year-old, to a teenager who already felt different from her friends, already struggled with questions of identity and belonging? I convinced myself that silence was kindness, that my lies were a form of love. But lies have a way of growing, of taking on lives of their own, of becoming so big and so entrenched that telling the truth feels impossible. And the longer I waited, the harder it became. The years passed, as years do. Josephine grew up into a remarkable young woman. Smart, determined, fierce. She graduated at the top of her class, went to college on a scholarship, became a social worker, helping families in crisis. The irony wasn't lost on me. My daughter, raised on lies about her own family, spending her life helping other families navigate their truths. She got married at 26 to a good man named Thomas, who adored her. They had 2 children, my grandbabies, the lights of my life. She built a beautiful existence, full of love and purpose and meaning. But always there was that shadow, that absence, that question mark where her father should have been. She asked about him less as she got older. Maybe she'd made peace with his absence. Maybe she'd given up hope. Maybe she just learned that asking caused me pain. But sometimes, in unguarded moments, I'd catch her with a faraway look in her eyes, and I knew she was thinking about him, wondering about him, missing a man she barely remembered. On her 30th birthday, she told me she wanted to find him. I need to know, Mama. I need to understand why he left. I need to hear it from him. My heart stopped. This was the moment I had dreaded for almost 3 decades. Baby, I said carefully, are you sure that's a good idea? Sometimes it's better to let the past stay in the past. I've spent my whole life with questions. I can't move forward until I have answers. I wanted to tell her the truth then. I wanted to sit her down and explain everything. The other wife, the other children, the lies upon lies that had built up over the years. But I was afraid. Afraid of how she'd react. Afraid of destroying the peace she'd made with his absence. Afraid of losing her. So I stayed silent. One more time, I stayed silent. Do what you need to do. I just want you to be prepared. He might not be the man you've imagined. I know, Mama. I'm not expecting a fairy tale. I just want the truth. The truth. Only if she knew how complicated the truth really was. It took her 4 years to find him. 4 years of searching, of dead ends, of false leads. 4 years of hoping and being disappointed. And then, 2 years ago, she found a death certificate. Raymond Carter had died in 2019. Heart attack. He was 72 years old.
She never got to meet him, never got to ask her questions, never got to look him in the eyes and demand to know why he'd abandoned her. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought she'd grieve the father she never knew and move on. But Raymond, even in death, had one more surprise for us. His lawyer contacted Josephine 6 months after she found the death certificate. Raymond had left a letter. a letter to be delivered to any children who might come looking for him. A letter that told the truth. All of it. The other wife, the other children, the bigamy, the lies. Everything I'd spent 34 years hiding spelled out in Raymond's own handwriting. And that's when my daughter showed up at my door, mascara running down her face, demanding to know if any of it was true. That's when I had to make a choice. Keep lying or finally tell the truth. I'll never forget the look on Josephine's face when she walked through my door that evening. She was 36 years old, a grown woman with a career and a family of her own. But in that moment, she looked like a lost little girl, like the 2-year-old who used to toddle to the door calling for her daddy, confused about where he'd gone. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hands were trembling, and she was holding that letter, those pages covered in Raymond's handwriting, like they were a bomb about to explode. "Mama," she said, her voice cracking, "is this true? Is any of this true?" I stood there in my living room, 70 years old, and I felt the weight of 3 decades of lies pressing down on my chest. I could have denied it, could have said Raymond was confused or lying or trying to cause trouble from beyond the grave, could have added one more lie to the pile and hoped it would hold. But I looked at my daughter's face, the pain, the confusion, the desperate need to understand, and I knew I couldn't do it anymore. "Sit down, baby," I said quietly. "We need to talk." She didn't sit. She just stood there staring at me, waiting. "Is it true, Mama? Did he have another wife? Another family? Did you know?" The questions came out like bullets, each one hitting its target. I took a deep breath. 34 years of secrets, and it all came down to this moment. "Yes," I said. "It's true. All of it." The sound that came out of Josephine wasn't quite a sob and wasn't quite a scream. It was something in between, a wounded animal sound that I'll hear in my nightmares for the rest of my life. "You knew," she said. "You knew this whole time?" "I found out when you were 18 months old. I found pictures in his briefcase, pictures of his other family." "And you never told me?" "I was trying to protect you." "Protect me from what? From the truth? From knowing who my father really was?" "From being hurt. From feeling like you weren't enough. From carrying the weight of his choices. So instead, you lied to me. For 34 years, you lied to me." I didn't have a defense. She was right. I had lied. Over and over and over again, I had looked my daughter in the eyes and told her things that weren't true. Every time I asked about him, Josephine continued, pacing now, her heels clicking against my hardwood floor. Every time I asked why he left, why he didn't call, why he didn't come to my graduation or my wedding or the birth of my children, you told me he was busy. You told me he loved me but couldn't be there. You told me... Her voice broke. "You told me he was a good man who just made complicated choices. You let me believe that, Mama. You let me spend my whole life thinking my father was some kind of tragic hero instead of a bigamist who abandoned his child." "I didn't know what else to do," I whispered. "You were so young. And then you got older and I'd already told so many stories and I didn't know how to undo them without destroying everything. So you just kept lying. I kept protecting you the only way I knew how. That's not protection, Mama. That's control. That's you deciding what I was allowed to know about my own life, my own history, my own father. She finally sat down, collapsing onto my sofa like her legs couldn't hold her anymore. The letter was still clutched in her hands, crumpled now, stained with tears. He had other children, she said, her voice hollow. A boy and a girl, Marcus and Angela. They're older than me. They grew up with him. I know. They had a father, a real father who lived in their house and came to their birthday parties and taught them to ride bikes. And I had nothing. I had stories and lies and a fantasy I built in my head because you wouldn't tell me the truth. Baby, I'm so sorry. Don't. She held up her hand, stopping me. Don't apologize right now. I can't hear it right now. We sat in silence for a long moment. The clock on my wall ticked away the seconds. Outside, I could hear the evening birds singing their twilight songs, oblivious to the destruction happening inside my living room. I need to know everything, Josephine finally said, from the beginning. I need to know what really happened. So I told her. I told her about meeting Raymond at the law office, about his charm, his attention, the way he made me feel seen for the first time in my life. I told her about falling in love, about finding out I was pregnant, about the courthouse wedding that was never legal because he was already married to someone else. I told her about the happy times too, because there were happy times despite everything. The way he'd bring me flowers, the way he'd hold her when she was a baby, looking at her with something that might have been love. The way he could make me laugh even when everything else was falling apart. And I told her about finding the photographs, about confronting him, about the night he left and never came back.
He just left, she said when I finished, just like that. Like we didn't matter at all. I think we mattered, I said carefully. Just not enough. Not as much as his other life, his other family. We were something on the side, something he could walk away from when it got too complicated. How could you not tell me this, Mama? How could you let me grow up thinking he was someone he wasn't? Because you loved him. The words came out barely above a whisper. Even though he was gone, even though you barely remembered him, you loved him. You kept his picture by your bed. You used to talk to it at night, telling him about your day. How could I take that away from you? By telling me the truth, by letting me grieve the real him instead of a fantasy. I was afraid, Josephine, afraid you'd be devastated, afraid you'd feel like you weren't good enough, like there was something wrong with you that made him choose them over us. I was afraid. I paused, the hardest admission of all catching in my throat. I was afraid you'd blame me. Blame you? For what? For being foolish enough to fall for him, for not seeing through his lies, for bringing you into a situation that was doomed from the start. Tears were streaming down my face now, but I didn't bother wiping them away. I was ashamed, baby, so ashamed of the choice I made, and I didn't want you to be ashamed of me too. Josephine stared at me for a long moment. Then she stood up, gathered her purse and the crumpled letter, and headed for the door. Where are you going? I asked, panic rising in my chest. Home. I need to think. I need to process all of this. Baby, please, let's keep talking. Let's work through this together. She turned to look at me, and what I saw in her eyes broke my heart. Not anger. I could have handled anger, but disappointment. Deep, profound disappointment. I don't know how to talk to you right now, Mama. I don't know what to believe anymore. Everything I thought I knew about my life, about my father, about you, it's all different now, and I need time to figure out what that means. I love you, Josephine. I've always loved you. Everything I did was because I love you. I know you believe that, but right now, your love feels a lot like betrayal. She walked out the door, and I sat in my empty living room, surrounded by the wreckage of 34 years of secrets, and I wondered if I'd just lost my daughter forever. The days that followed were the longest of my life. Josephine didn't call, didn't text, didn't respond to the messages I left on her phone, the voicemails where I apologized over and over, begging her to let me explain. I'd go to sleep at night wondering if she was okay. I'd wake up in the morning reaching for my phone, hoping to see her name on the screen. I'd catch myself picking up the phone to call her a dozen times a day, then putting it down because I knew she wasn't ready to hear from me. This was my punishment, I told myself. This was what I deserved for all those years of lying. The silence was my penance. But knowing I deserved it didn't make it hurt any less. About a week after that terrible evening, I got a call from my son-in-law, Thomas. "Miss Vivian," he said, his voice careful and measured, "I wanted to let you know that Josephine's okay. She's struggling, but she's okay." "Thank you for telling me," I said, my voice thick with unshed tears. "I've been so worried." "I know. She knows too. She's not ready to talk yet. This has really shaken her." "I understand. Can I ask you something, Miss Vivian? Something personal?" "Of course." There was a pause. Then, "Why didn't you tell her? I'm not judging. I'm trying to understand. Josephine keeps saying she doesn't understand, and I want to be able to help her, but I don't understand either." I sat down heavily on my kitchen chair, the phone pressed to my ear. "I told myself it was to protect her," I said slowly, "and that was part of it. I didn't want her to feel rejected, didn't want her to think there was something wrong with her that made him choose them over us. But I think I was also protecting myself from having to admit that I'd been fooled, that I'd fallen for a man who was already married, already had children, already had a whole life that didn't include me." I paused, gathered thoughts. When you've been made a fool of like that, Thomas, the shame is enormous. And I think I couldn't bear to see that shame reflected in my daughter's eyes. So you kept it secret. I kept it secret. And then weeks turned into months, and months turned into years, and the longer I waited, the harder it became. How do you tell your 10-year-old that everything you've said about her father is a lie? How do you tell your 20-year-old, your 30-year-old? "I don't know," Thomas admitted. "I can't imagine being in that position. There was never a good time. There was never a moment where the truth felt less destructive than the lie, so I just kept waiting, kept putting it off, kept telling myself I'd tell her eventually when she was older, when she was stronger, when the time was right. And the time was never right. The time was never right, and then it was too late. Raymond was dead, and she found out from a letter instead of from me. And now she looks at me like I'm a stranger." Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "She doesn't hate you, Miss Vivian. She's hurt and confused and angry, but she doesn't hate you. She's just trying to reconcile the mother she thought she knew with this new information." "I'm still the same person," I said, though even as I said it, I wondered if it was true. "I'm still her mama." "I know. And deep down, she knows too. Just give her time." "How much time?" "As much as she needs. You kept this secret for 34 years. She's gonna need more than a week to process it." He was right. I knew he was right. But the waiting was agony. 2 weeks after the truth came out, Josephine called. My heart nearly stopped when I saw her name on my phone screen. I grabbed it so fast I almost dropped it. "Baby?" "Hi, Mama." Her voice was tired, guarded, nothing like the warm tone I was used to hearing from her. "I'm so glad you called. I've been so worried."
I know. Thomas told me. A pause. I'm not calling to forgive you or to say everything's okay. I'm calling because I have questions. More questions. And I need you to answer them honestly. Anything, I said. I'll tell you anything you want to know. Do you promise? No more lies? No more half-truths? No more protecting me from things you think I can't handle? I promise. Another pause. Then, did he ever try to contact me? After he left, did he ever reach out? My heart sank. This was one of the questions I dreaded most. No, I said quietly. He never tried to contact you. The money came for a couple of years and then that stopped too. I never heard from him again. I heard Josephine exhale slowly. So, he just forgot about me. I don't think he forgot. I think he made a choice. He chose his other family, his other life. We were a complication he decided to leave behind. Did you ever try to contact him? To demand he be part of my life? In the beginning, yes. I called the number I had for him, but it was disconnected. I wrote letters to the address where he'd supposedly live, but they came back undelivered. He'd covered his tracks. He didn't want to be found. But you could have hired someone, a private investigator. You could have tracked him down. I could have, I admitted. But by then I'd seen who he really was, and I asked myself, do I want this man in my daughter's life? A man who lies, who deceives, who maintains two families without any of them knowing? What kind of father would he be? That wasn't your choice to make. Josephine's voice rose sharply. He was my father. Good or bad, he was my father. I deserved to know him, to make my own decisions about whether I wanted a relationship with him. You're right, I said. You're absolutely right. I made choices for you that I had no right to make. I told myself I was protecting you, but I was also controlling the narrative, deciding what you got to know and when. Why, Mama? Why couldn't you trust me with the truth? Because the truth was ugly. Because I was ashamed. Because I didn't want you to look at me the way you're looking at me now.
I'm not even looking at you, she said, a hint of her old dry humor breaking through. We're on the phone. Despite everything, I felt a tiny flicker of hope. She was still in there. My Josephine was still in there, underneath the hurt and the anger. You know what I mean, I said. I didn't want you to think less of me, less of yourself. I wanted you to believe you came from love, even if it wasn't the kind of love I thought it was. Did you love him, really love him? I thought about the question. It deserved an honest answer. I thought I did. But looking back, I think I loved what he represented more than who he actually was. He made me feel seen, special, chosen. And I was so hungry for that feeling that I didn't look too closely at the man providing it. That's sad, Mama. It is, but it's also the truth. And I promised you the truth from now on. We talked for another hour that night. She asked more questions about the other woman, about the other children, and about what Raymond had said when I confronted him. I answered every one as honestly as I could. It wasn't a reconciliation. It was more like an investigation, with Josephine gathering facts, trying to reconstruct her own history from the pieces I'd hidden from her all these years. But at least we were talking. At least she was giving me a chance to explain. At the end of the call, she said, I need more time, Mama. I'm not ready to see you yet. I understand. But I'll call again. I have more questions. I'll answer them. Whatever you need to know. Okay. A pause. Mama? Yes, baby? I love you. I'm angry and hurt and confused, but I love you. I need you to know that. Tears streamed down my face. I love you too, Josephine, more than anything in this world. We'll figure this out. I don't know how yet, but we'll figure it out. I believe that. I have to believe that. She hung up, and I sat there crying in my kitchen, feeling something I hadn't felt since she'd walked out my door. Hope. The next few months were a journey, a slow, painful, necessary journey toward truth and healing. Josephine kept calling with questions. Some nights they'd last for hours as she worked through decades of suppressed curiosity about her father. Other nights they were short and pointed. A single question, a single answer, then goodbye. I told her everything, the good memories and the bad, the things Raymond had said and done, the way I'd felt when I discovered his betrayal, the choices I'd made and why I'd made them. No more lies, no more half-truths, just the painful, complicated reality of our family's history. Some of what I told her was hard for her to hear. She'd built up such a romanticized image of her father over the years that learning the truth meant grieving a man who had never really existed. I used to imagine he'd show up someday, just appear at my door, explain everything, tell me he'd been trying to find me all these years. I had this whole fantasy about how we'd reconnect, how he'd meet my kids, how we'd make up for lost time. I'm sorry, baby. I'm sorry he wasn't the man you imagined. He wasn't even the man you imagined, the man you fell in love with. That was an act too, wasn't it? I think parts of it were real. I think he genuinely cared for me in his way, but his way was limited, selfish. He wasn't capable of the kind of love that puts someone else first. Then why did he have so many people depending on him? A wife, children, then you and me. Why did he keep creating responsibilities he couldn't handle? I've thought about that a lot over the years. And I think Raymond needed to feel special, needed to be the center of attention, the one everyone wanted. Having multiple families made him feel powerful, desirable, important.
That's sick. It's broken. He was a broken man. That doesn't excuse what he did, but it might explain it. Did you ever feel sorry for the other woman, Dolores? She was being deceived too. I did, I admitted. Once I got past my own anger and hurt, I thought about her a lot. She was married to him for years, raising his children, probably believing he was working late or traveling for business while he was actually with me. She was a victim too. Did you ever try to contact her? No, I was too ashamed. And I didn't want to be the one to blow up her life, not when I had my own life to rebuild. What about Marcus and Angela, my half-siblings? Did you ever think about reaching out to them? This was a question I had been dreading. I thought about it, I said, many times. They're your brother and sister, after all. They share your blood. But I didn't know what to say. Hi, I'm the woman your father had an affair with, and by the way, you have a sister you never knew about. It seemed cruel, to them and to you. It would have been the truth. You're right, it would have been. But back then, I was still committed to the lie, still trying to protect you and myself from the full reality of who Raymond was. Josephine was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, I want to find them. My heart clenched. Find who? Marcus and Angela, my half-siblings. They're out there somewhere, and I want to know them. Are you sure that's a good idea? You don't know how they'll react. They might not want anything to do with you. Maybe not. But I've spent my whole life not knowing half my family because you decided what was best for me. I'm done letting other people make those decisions. I'm going to reach out, and whatever happens, at least it will be my choice. I felt a flash of hurt at her words, the pointed reminder that my protection felt like control, but I swallowed it down. You're right. It's your choice, and I'll support whatever you decide. Thank you, Mama. That's all I've ever wanted. Not protection, not managed truth, just support for making my own decisions about my own life. I hear you. I really do. It's going to take time for me to trust that, but I'm willing to try if you are. I am, baby. I promise I am. Over the next few months, Josephine threw herself into finding her half-siblings. It wasn't easy. Marcus and Angelo were in their early 40s now, with their own lives, their own families. They weren't easy to track down, and once she found them, reaching out was even harder. She started with Marcus, the older one. She found him on social media, a lawyer in Houston, married with 3 kids. His profile picture showed a handsome man who looked startlingly like Raymond, the same smile, the same confident posture. She sent him a message, waited days for a response. When it came, it wasn't what she'd hoped for. He said he doesn't want contact, she told me, her voice flat with disappointment. He said his father told him about the other woman years ago, made it seem like you were some kind of homewrecker who tried to break up their parents' marriage. He said he has no interest in knowing the child of the woman who almost destroyed his family. My heart broke for her. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Well, not directly. Raymond poisoned them against us before he even died. Of course he did. That's who he was. Always managing the narrative, always making himself look good. He probably told Dolores and the kids some version of events that made him the victim. But it's not fair. I didn't do anything wrong. I was a baby when all this happened. I know, sweetheart. I know. Angela's response was different. Unlike her brother, she'd been curious about the possibility of other siblings. She'd seen things over the years that made her wonder about their father's faithfulness. Late nights, secret phone calls, money that went unaccounted for. She'd suspected there might be more to his story.
When Josephine reached out, Angela was cautious but open. They exchanged messages, then emails, then finally arranged a video call. Josephine called me the day before, nervous and excited. What if she hates me, Mama? She agreed to talk to you. That's not hate. What if she blames me for what happened, for her father's betrayal? Then she'd be blaming the wrong person. You were a child. You didn't ask to be born into this mess. What should I say to her? The truth. Just tell her your truth. Who you are, what you know, what you're hoping for. Let her decide how she wants to respond. The video call lasted 2 hours. I know because Josephine called me immediately afterward, crying, but somehow also laughing. She's wonderful, Mama. She's smart and funny and kind. We talked about everything, Daddy, our childhoods, our families. She showed me pictures of her kids, my niece and nephew that I never knew existed. And her feelings about Raymond? Complicated, just like mine. She loved him. He was her daddy, but she also saw his flaws. The lying, the manipulation, the way he'd charm his way out of any situation. She said she always felt like she never quite knew the real him. None of us did, I think. He showed different faces to different people. Angela wants to stay in touch. She wants us to be sisters for real, not just on paper, but actually in each other's lives. I felt tears prick at my eyes. That's wonderful, baby. That's really wonderful. She's not angry at you either. I told her the whole story, how Raymond deceived you, how you didn't know he was married. And she understood. She said her mother went through something similar, finding out years later about all the lies. "How is Dolores?" "She passed away about 5 years ago. Cancer." Angela said she never really recovered from finding out about Daddy's betrayals. There were apparently more than just you and me, other women, other secrets. It broke something in her. My heart ached for this woman I'd never met, this woman I'd spent years resenting for having what I couldn't. She'd been a victim too. We all had. "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. "I truly am." Angela said something else, Mama, something that made me think. "What's that?" She said her mother spent the last years of her life bitter and angry, holding on to her resentment toward Daddy and all the women he'd been with. She said it ate her up inside, made her sick, and kept her from being happy even when she had things to be happy about. That's a hard way to live. Angela said she doesn't want that for herself. She said she's choosing to let go of the anger, to forgive Daddy even though he never asked for forgiveness, not for his sake, but for hers. That's very wise. I want to do that too, Mama. I want to forgive him, and... She paused. "I want to forgive you." The breath caught in my chest. "Josephine, I'm not there yet, not completely, but I'm working on it. I'm trying to understand why you did what you did, trying to see it from your perspective. It's hard, and some days I'm still so angry. But I don't want to be like Angela's mother. I don't want bitterness to eat me up inside." "I don't want that for you either, baby. I never wanted any of this for you." "I know, Mama. I'm starting to believe that. I'm starting to understand that you were doing the best you could with an impossible situation." I was. I made mistakes, so many mistakes, but I was always trying to do right by you. I believe you. And I think we're going to be okay. Not right away, not easily, but eventually we're going to be okay. I want that more than anything. Me too, Mama. Me too. The real turning point came about 8 months after the truth came out. Josephine had been building a relationship with Angela, slowly and carefully. They'd had several video calls, exchanged countless messages, and were planning to meet in person for the first time. Angela was going to fly in from Houston, and they were going to spend a weekend together, getting to know each other as the sisters they'd never been allowed to be. But before that happened, Josephine asked me to do something I never expected. "I want you to meet Angela too," she said during one of our phone calls. "I want her to know my mother, the real you, not the version Daddy painted." My heart raced with anxiety. "Are you sure? I'm the other woman, Josephine. I'm the reason her parents' marriage was a lie." "No, Mama. Daddy is the reason. You were deceived just like everyone else. Angela understands that now. She wants to meet you." "She said that?" "She said she wants to know the woman who raised her sister. She said she can't understand me fully without understanding where I came from." I sat with that for a moment, trying to process what it would mean to meet this woman, to look into the eyes of the daughter Raymond had chosen, the child he'd raised while abandoning mine. "I'm scared," I admitted. "What if she blames me? What if seeing me brings up all the pain again? Then we'll deal with it together. But Mama, I spent my whole life with secrets and lies and things hidden away. I'm done with that. I want everything out in the open, even the hard stuff, especially the hard stuff." "Okay," I said finally. "If you want me there, I'll be there." "I do, Mama. I really do." Angela arrived on a Friday afternoon in October. Josephine picked her up from the airport and brought her straight to my house, where we planned to have dinner together. I'd spent all day cooking my mother's recipes, the ones that felt like home, trying to distract myself from the anxiety that threatened to overwhelm me. When I heard the car pull up, my hands started shaking so bad I had to set down the spoon I was holding. This is it, I thought.
This is the moment when all those years of secrets finally catch up with me. I heard voices outside, then footsteps on my porch, then the door opening. And there she was, Angela Carter Williams, Raymond's first daughter, the child he'd chosen. She was beautiful. That was my first thought. Tall and elegant, with Raymond's eyes and her mother's complexion, she carried herself with a quiet confidence that reminded me painfully of him, though there was a warmth in her expression that he'd never had. She looked at me, and I saw her taking me in. The other woman, the woman her father had deceived them all for. I didn't know what to say. All the words I'd rehearsed flew out of my head, leaving me standing there mute and trembling. It was Angela who broke the silence. "Mrs. Johnson," she said, stepping forward with her hand extended. "Thank you for inviting me into your home. I know this can't be easy for you." "It's not easy for any of us," I managed to say, taking her hand. "And please, call me Vivian." She smiled, and something in my chest loosened just a little. "Vivian, it's good to finally meet you. Would you like to come in? I made dinner. Probably too much food, but I didn't know what you like, so I made everything." Angela laughed, a warm, genuine sound. "That sounds exactly like something my mother would have done. She always cooked enough to feed an army when she was nervous." The mention of Dolores made me tense, but Angela's tone wasn't accusatory, just observational, like she was noting a similarity, not drawing a battle line. Josephine was watching us both with anxious eyes, ready to intervene if things went wrong. But so far, they weren't going wrong. They were just going. We sat down to dinner at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd fed Josephine thousands of meals, where I'd cried over Raymond's betrayal, where I'd made so many decisions that shaped our lives. At first, the conversation was careful, safe topics. The weather, Angela's flight, the food. We circled around the elephant in the room, none of us quite ready to address it directly. But eventually, as these things do, the conversation turned to Raymond. "Can I ask you something, Vivian? Something personal?" "Of course." "What was he like? With you, I mean, my father. I only know him as my daddy, but he must have been different with you." I thought about how to answer. This woman deserved honesty, but she also deserved gentleness. He was still her father, whatever else he'd done. "He was charming," I said finally. "So charming it took my breath away. He made me feel like I was the most special woman in the world, like he couldn't believe his luck in finding me." Angela nodded slowly. "That sounds like Daddy. He could make anyone feel special. It was his gift." "And his weapon," Josephine added quietly. "Yes, and his weapon. He used that charm to get what he wanted from people, to make them overlook things they shouldn't overlook." "Did you know? Growing up, did you suspect that that there were others?"
Angela was quiet for a moment. I knew something wasn't right. There were too many business trips, too many late nights, too many phone calls he'd take in the other room. My mother knew too, I think, but she didn't want to see it. It was easier to pretend. "I understand that," I said. "I did the same thing. In the beginning, ignored the red flags because I wanted so badly to believe in what we had." "How did you find out? The truth, I mean." I told her about the photographs, the briefcase, the other family smiling at the camera while I sat at home with a baby, wondering where my husband was. Angela listened without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry you went through that. I'm sorry too. For all of us. We were all victims of his lies." "Not all of us," Josephine said, her voice tight. "He wasn't a victim. He was the one who did this." "You're right," Angela agreed. "Daddy made choices. Every lie, every deception, those were choices. And we're all still dealing with the consequences." "Can I ask you something?" I said to Angela. "Something I've wondered about for years.
Of course. Did he ever talk about us? About Josephine? Did he acknowledge that she existed? Angela's face clouded. He told us once, when I was about 15. My mother had found something, I don't know what, and confronted him. He admitted there had been another woman, another child. He made it sound like a brief affair, like it was already over and done with. He said the child wasn't really his concern. Not his concern, Josephine repeated, her voice flat. His daughter wasn't his concern. I'm sorry, Josie. I'm so sorry. If I'd understood what that really meant, I would have tried to find you sooner. You were a child yourself. It wasn't your responsibility. Still, you deserved better. You both did. We sat in silence for a moment, the weight of Raymond's betrayal settling over us like a shroud. Then Angela said something that changed everything. I used to hate you, Vivian. Before I understood what really happened, I hated you. I thought you were some kind of homewrecker, a woman who'd tried to steal my father away from our family. I flinched even though I'd expected as much. But then I got older. I learned more about who my father really was. And I realized that you were just another woman he'd lied to. Another person he'd used and discarded when it was convenient. That's true, I said quietly. I never wanted to hurt your family. I didn't even know your family existed. I know that now. And I want you to know something. She reached across the table and took my hand, surprising me. I forgive you. For whatever part you played in this, even unknowingly, I forgive you. Tears sprang to my eyes. You don't have to. I know I don't have to. I want to. I've spent too many years carrying anger and resentment. It's exhausting, and it doesn't change anything. Daddy's still dead. The past is still the past. The only thing I can change is how I move forward. That's very generous of you. It's not generosity. It's survival. She squeezed my hand. My mother died bitter and angry, holding on to grudges that only hurt her in the end. I don't want that for myself. I want to be free. I looked at this woman, this stranger who was somehow family, and I felt something shift inside me. For 34 years, I'd carried my own bitterness, my own anger, not just at Raymond, but at myself, at my foolishness, my naivete, my failure to see through his lies. I'd punished myself with that anger day after day, year after year, and I'd let it shape the choices I made, including the choice to lie to my daughter. If I'd forgiven myself sooner, would I have been brave enough to tell the truth? If I'd let go of the shame, would I have found the strength to trust Josephine with her own history? I don't know, but I knew this. Angela was right. Holding on to bitterness only poisoned the person holding it, and I was tired of being poisoned. I want to be free too, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I've been carrying this for so long. The shame, the guilt, the fear of being judged. I'm tired.
Then let it go, Mama. Josephine's voice was soft but firm. Let it go. We can't change what happened, but we can change what happens next. Can you forgive me? I asked, looking at my daughter. Truly forgive me for all the lies? I'm working on it, she said honestly. It's not like flipping a switch. Some days I'm still angry, still hurt, but I'm choosing to move toward forgiveness, even when it's hard. That's enough, I said. That's more than enough. And Mama, Josephine leaned forward, her eyes meeting mine. I need you to forgive yourself too. Whatever mistakes you made them out of love. Misguided love, maybe, overprotective love, but love all the same. She's right, Angela added. You did what you thought was best for your daughter. That's what mothers do. We don't always get it right, but we try. I looked at these two women, my daughter and her half-sister, united by blood and betrayal and the choice to move forward together. And I felt something I hadn't felt in decades. Peace. Not complete peace, not the kind that erases all the pain and confusion, but a beginning, a crack in the wall of shame and secrecy I'd built around myself. Light finally breaking through. After dinner, the three of us sat in my living room talking late into the night. We shared stories about Raymond, the good and the bad, the funny and the painful. We pieced together a fuller picture of who he was, seeing him through each other's eyes. Angela told us about his later years, how he'd mellowed as he aged, become more reflective, how he'd talked about regrets he had, though he'd never been specific about what they were. I think he knew in the end that he'd hurt people. I don't think he was capable of truly making amends, but I think he felt the weight of what he'd done. Is that why he left the letter? The one that told me everything? Maybe, or maybe it was his way of controlling the narrative one last time, even from beyond the grave, making sure his version of events was the one that got told. It wasn't his version, I pointed out. The letter told the truth, all of it. Yes, but he got to choose when it came out and how. He didn't give you the chance to tell Josephine yourself, in your own way, in your own time. I hadn't thought about it that way before, but Angela was right. Even Raymond's posthumous confession was an act of control. He took the choice out of my hands, just as he had taken so many other choices. He was manipulative to the very end, I said. He was, but we don't have to let him manipulate us anymore. Angela looked at both of us. We get to decide what his legacy is. Not the lies, not the secrets, but what we build in spite of them. What do you mean? I mean this, right here. The three of us, sitting in this living room, choosing to know each other despite everything that happened. That's our victory. That's how we win. By becoming family, Josephine said slowly. Real family, not just blood. Exactly. Daddy divided us, kept us separate, kept us in the dark. But we're coming together now. We're breaking the cycle of secrets. I looked at Angela with new appreciation. This woman had every reason to hate me, to reject Josephine, to close the door on any relationship with the family her father had hidden. Instead, she was building bridges. You're remarkable, I told her. Your mother raised a remarkable woman. Angela's eyes glistened. Thank you. She would have liked to hear that. Despite everything, she was a good mother. She did her best, just like you did. We all did our best. That's what I'm finally understanding. Everyone in this mess was doing their best with what they knew, what they had, what they could handle. Even Daddy? Angela asked. Josephine thought about it. Maybe. Maybe his best was just really, really limited. Maybe he was too broken to do better. That's generous of you. It's not generous, it's practical. I can't go back and change who he was. I can only decide how I'm going to feel about it. And I'm choosing not to let his brokenness break me. I felt tears streaming down my face again. These two women, these sisters who'd found each other despite everything.
I should have told you sooner, I said to Josephine. I see that now. I should have trusted you with the truth, even when it was ugly. Yes, Josephine agreed. You should have. But I understand why you didn't, and I'm choosing to forgive you. Choosing? It's a choice I make every day. Some days it's easier than others, but I keep choosing it because the alternative is too painful. She reached over and took my hand. I love you, Mama. That hasn't changed. It won't change. I love you too, baby, more than you'll ever know. I know, she said. I've always known. Even when I was angry, even when I felt betrayed, I never doubted that you loved me. That's something, Angela said softly. That's really something. What do you mean? I mean that despite all the secrets, despite all the lies, your mother's love came through. You always felt loved. That's more than a lot of people can say. Josephine nodded slowly. You're right. I did always feel loved. Even when I felt confused or abandoned by my father, I knew my mother loved me. That was my anchor. That's your mother's legacy, Angela said, looking at me. Not the secrets, not the lies, but the love. That's what matters. I couldn't speak. The tears were coming too fast, the emotions too overwhelming, but I squeezed my daughter's hand and nodded. Love. Despite everything, love had survived. That was the turning point, the moment when I finally understood what all those years of secrets had really been about. I told myself I was protecting Josephine from the truth, but really, I had been protecting myself from shame, from judgment, from the fear of losing my daughter's love. But the truth hadn't destroyed her love. Nothing could destroy her love. It was stronger than the lies, stronger than the betrayal, stronger than 34 years of secrets. And now, finally, we were free. Free to build something new on the wreckage of the old. Free to become the family we were always meant to be. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be more hard conversations, more painful revelations, more work to do. But we'd taken the first step. We'd chosen truth over lies, connection over isolation, forgiveness over bitterness. And that choice, that turning point, changed everything. 2 years have passed since that dinner at my house. 2 years since Angela flew in from Houston and sat at my kitchen table. 2 years since the three of us stayed up talking until dawn, piecing together the broken fragments of our shared history. 2 years since I finally started to let go of the shame I'd carried for decades. So much has changed since then. So much has healed. Josephine and Angela have become true sisters, not just in blood, but in spirit. They talk every week, sometimes more. They visited each other's homes, met each other's children, woven their lives together in ways that would have seemed impossible 2 years ago. Last Christmas, we all gathered at Josephine's house, her family, Angela's family, and me. 3 generations sitting around the same table, connected by Raymond's blood, but no longer defined by his lies.
The living room, talking and laughing and occasionally crying as we shared memories and built new ones. Thomas pulled me aside at one point, a glass of eggnog in his hand and a warm smile on his face. "You know what I see when I look at this room?" he asked. "What?" "Redemption. I see a family that was broken apart by lies, coming back together through truth. That's pretty remarkable, Miss Vivian." "It doesn't feel remarkable," I admitted. "It just feels like what had to happen." Maybe that's what redemption is. Not something grand or dramatic, just what has to happen when people choose love over fear. I thought about his words for a long time after that. Love over fear. That's what I'd finally chosen after all those years of letting fear drive my decisions. Fear of judgment, fear of rejection, fear of losing my daughter's love. But the love had been stronger than the fear. It had survived everything, the lies, the revelation, the painful aftermath. And now it was growing, spreading, encompassing people I'd never imagined would be part of my family. Marcus, Angela's brother, eventually came around. It took longer for him. He'd been closer to Raymond, more invested in the image of the perfect father. Learning the full truth about who Raymond really was has shaken him deeply. But Angela kept working on him, kept inviting him to family gatherings, kept leaving the door open. And about a year ago, he finally walked through it.
He reached out to Josephine first. A hesitant email apologizing for his earlier rejection, asking if they could start over. Josephine, ever gracious, agreed. Their relationship is still new, still fragile, but it's growing. They've met in person twice now, and Marcus has started sending birthday cards to Josephine's children, his niece and nephew, the family he never knew he had. It's strange, Josephine told me after her first meeting with Marcus. He looks so much like Daddy. Same eyes, same smile, same way of holding himself. But he's different too, softer somehow, more willing to admit when he's wrong. Maybe he learned from watching Raymond's mistakes. Maybe. Or maybe he's just decided to be better. She paused. That's what I'm trying to do too. Be better. Learn from the past instead of repeating it. What do you mean? I mean, with my own kids, I've thought a lot about secrets, Mama, about the ones you kept from me and why, and I've made a decision. What decision? No secrets with my children. Not about the hard stuff, not about family history, not about anything important. I want them to grow up knowing they can trust me to tell them the truth even when it's painful. I felt a mix of emotions at her words. Pride that she'd learned from my mistakes. Sadness that my mistakes were the lesson. Hope that the cycle of secrets might finally be broken. That's wise, baby, very wise. You taught me, Mama, from watching what secrets can do to a family. You taught me, even if the lesson wasn't what you intended. I wish I'd taught you differently. I wish I'd been brave enough to tell you the truth from the beginning. I know. But we can't change the past. We can only change what we do going forward. And you've changed, Mama. I see it. You're not carrying the same weight you used to carry. I had changed. The shame that had wrapped itself around my heart for so many years was finally loosening its grip. Not gone entirely. I'm not sure it will ever be completely gone, but lighter, manageable, no longer the defining feature of my existence. I started going to therapy about 6 months after the truth came out, not because anyone told me to, but because I realized I needed help processing everything I'd been carrying. My therapist, Dr. Williams, was a Black woman about Angela's age with kind eyes and a gentle way of asking questions that cut right to the heart of things. She helped me understand why I made the choices I made, not to excuse them, but to learn from them. You were operating from a place of shame, she told me during one of our sessions. Shame told you that if Josephine knew the truth, she would reject you. Shame told you that the truth was too dangerous to speak. But shame lies. Vivian, it always lies. What do you mean?
I mean that shame kept you isolated in your fear. It told you the worst would happen if you told the truth. But the worst didn't happen, did it? You told the truth, and your daughter is still here. Your relationship is healing, not destroyed. But it was so painful. The months after she found out, they were terrible. Yes, they were. The truth is often painful at first, but the pain of truth is clean. It heals. The pain of secrets is different. It festers, it grows, it spreads to everything it touches. I thought about all those years of secret keeping, the constant vigilance, the careful management of information, the energy spent maintaining the lies. It had been exhausting in ways I'd never fully acknowledged. I was so tired, I admitted. For 34 years, I was carrying this weight, and I didn't even realize how heavy it was until I finally put it down. That's often how it is with secrets. We adapt to the burden, normalize it, forget that there's another way to live, until we're finally free and we realize what we were missing all along. Is this what freedom feels like? Because it's terrifying. Dr. Williams smiled. Freedom often is terrifying at first.
We're so used to our cages that the open sky feels dangerous. But you're doing the hard work, Vivian. You're learning to fly. Learning to fly. At 72 years old, I was finally learning to fly. The relationship with Josephine has been rebuilt, stronger than before. It didn't happen overnight. There were setbacks, moments when old hurts resurfaced, times when the trust we were building felt fragile and uncertain. But we kept working at it, kept showing up for each other, kept choosing to move toward healing even when it was hard. These days, Josephine calls me every day. Not because she has to, not because she needs something, just because she wants to hear my voice. We talk about everything and nothing, the way mothers and daughters are supposed to. She stopped asking questions about Raymond. She knows everything now, every detail I can remember. There are no more secrets between us, no more hidden corners of our history. It's strange, she told me recently. I used to think about Daddy all the time, wonder about him, fantasize about him, build stories in my head about who he might be. But now that I know the truth, I think about him less. Is that good or bad? Good, I think. He was taking up so much space in my head, all that wondering and imagining. Now the truth is there instead, and it's smaller somehow, less consuming. The truth has a way of doing that. It might be painful, but it's also bounded. It has edges. It doesn't spread the way uncertainty does. That's exactly it. The not knowing was endless. The knowing has limits. I'm sorry I kept you in the not knowing for so long. I know you are, Mama, and I've forgiven you, really forgiven you, not just said the words. It took a while to get there, but I understand now why you did what you did. You were trying to protect me from pain. You just didn't realize you were causing a different kind of pain instead. The road to hell is paved with good intentions, I said wryly. Something like that. But your intentions were good, Mama. Your love was real. That's what I hold on to when the old hurt tries to come back. It still comes back sometimes? Less and less, but yes, sometimes. And when it does, I remind myself of everything you sacrificed for me. All those years you worked to give me a good life. All the ways you showed up for me, even while carrying this terrible secret. I should have done better. Maybe, but you did the best you could with what you knew. That's all any of us can do. Her grace has humbled me. Her willingness to forgive has shown me what love really looks like. Not perfect, not conditional, not dependent on never making mistakes, but generous, patient, committed to healing rather than punishment. I don't deserve a daughter like Josephine, but somehow, despite everything, she's mine. The four of us, me, Josephine, Angela, and Marcus, have started a new tradition. Every year on Raymond's birthday, we get together, not to celebrate him exactly, but to acknowledge the complicated reality of who he was and what he left behind. We share stories about him, the good ones and the bad ones, the memories that make us laugh and the ones that make us cry. We let him be a whole person, flawed and complex, rather than either the monster I could have made him or the hero Josephine once imagined. He taught me to ride a bike, Marcus said during our last gathering. I remember him running beside me, holding the seat, telling me I could do it. And when I finally balanced on my own, he cheered so loud the whole neighborhood heard.
He sent me a birthday card once, Josephine added. I was 7. It had a picture of a puppy on it, and inside he'd written, "Happy birthday to my special girl." Mama, you never knew about that, did you? I shook my head, surprised. He sent that? Raymond? It came in the mail, no return address.
I kept it hidden in my jewelry box for years because it felt like a secret just between us. He did think about you, Angela said softly. I know that doesn't make up for everything, but I remember him asking about you sometimes when I was older, wondering how you were doing, if you were happy. But he never reached out, Josephine said, and there was old pain in her voice. He wondered, but he didn't act. No, he didn't. That was who he was, full of feelings he couldn't follow through on, capable of love, but not commitment, present in spirit, but absent in practice. It's sad, I said. When you put it that way, it's just sad. It is, Angela agreed. He could have had so much more. All of us, together, a big, complicated family that loved him despite his flaws. But he was too afraid, too selfish, too trapped in his own patterns. His loss, Marcus said quietly. His loss, not ours. And that's the truth I've come to accept. Raymond lost out on knowing his daughter, on being part of her life, on seeing her become the remarkable woman she is. He lost out on grandchildren and holidays and the daily joys of family life. He made that choice, and we've made ours, to build something beautiful in spite of him, not because of him. I've also made peace with Dolores in my own way. She's been gone for years now, but I think about her sometimes. The woman Raymond married first, the woman he kept coming back to even while he was with me, the woman who spent her life sharing a husband she didn't know she was sharing. I used to resent her. Back in the early years, when I was raw with pain and betrayal, I'd think about her in that nice house with those children and that wedding ring, and I'd be consumed with jealousy. She had what I wanted. She had what should have been mine. But now I see it differently. She was a victim too, just in a different way. She lost years of her life to a man who was never fully hers, never fully present, never fully honest. And, unlike me, she had the clean break of discovery and departure. She had to live with the slow poison of suspicion, the gradual erosion of trust, the death by 1,000 cuts. I wish I could have known her, I told Angela once. I wish I could have told her I was sorry. Sorry for what? You didn't do anything wrong. I know, but I was part of her pain, even if I didn't mean to be. And I'd want her to know that I understand now, that I see her as a sister in suffering, not a rival. I think she would have appreciated that. Toward the end, she let go of a lot of anger. She said life was too short for grudges. She was right. She was usually right, Angela smiled sadly. I miss her. Despite everything, I miss her. Of course you do. She was your mother. That bond doesn't disappear just because things were complicated. No, it doesn't. She looked at me with something like gratitude. Thank you for understanding that, for not expecting me to hate her or defend her or choose sides. There are no sides anymore. There's just us, trying to make sense of a mess we didn't create. And doing a pretty good job of it, I think. I think so too. My relationship with myself has changed most of all. For so many years, I defined myself by my worst moment. The foolish young woman who fell for a married man's lies, the shameful secret keeper, the mother who couldn't tell her daughter the truth. But I'm more than that moment. I'm more than that choice. I'm a woman who survived betrayal and built a life anyway. I'm a mother who raised a remarkable daughter with love and sacrifice. I'm a grandmother who gets to watch the next generation grow up without the weight of secrets. I'm human, flawed and imperfect and capable of terrible mistakes, but also capable of growth, of change, of doing better when I know better. You're too hard on yourself, Dr. Williams told me during one of our recent sessions.
You've spent decades punishing yourself for a decision you made under impossible circumstances. When is enough? When have you suffered enough to earn your own forgiveness? The question stopped me cold. I'd never thought about it that way, as if forgiveness was something I had to earn, a debt I had to pay. I don't know. I don't know when it's enough. Maybe it's already enough. Maybe it was enough years ago. Maybe you've been serving a sentence that ended long before you realized it. How do I know? How do I know when I've earned the right to stop punishing myself? You don't earn it, Vivian. That's the point. Forgiveness isn't earned, it's given. And you have to give it to yourself. That's harder than forgiving anyone else. It usually is. But it's also more important. Because until you forgive yourself, you'll keep carrying this weight. And the weight will keep shaping your choices, your relationships, your whole life. I've been working on that. Self-forgiveness. It doesn't come naturally to me, this woman who was raised to be responsible, to carry burdens, to put everyone else first. But I'm trying. Day by day, choice by choice, I'm trying to release the grip of shame and embrace something gentler, something that looks a lot like grace. Last month, something beautiful happened. Josephine called me, excitement bubbling in her voice. "Mama, I need you to come over. There's something I want to show you." I drove to her house, curious and a little nervous. When I arrived, she led me to her home office, where a large canvas was propped against the wall. It was a family tree, but not the simple kind you see in children's school projects. This was elaborate, artistic, painted in watercolors with names and dates and photographs carefully arranged among the branches. And it included everyone. Me and Josephine on one branch, Raymond at the center where trunk met roots, Dolores and Angela and Marcus on another branch, the grandchildren, the great-grandchildren, everyone connected, everyone acknowledged. I had an artist friend help me. I wanted something that told the whole truth, not hiding anyone, not pretending any part of our history didn't happen. "It's beautiful," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Look here." She pointed to a small notation at the bottom of the canvas. I had her add something special. I looked where she was pointing and read the words inscribed there in elegant script. From secrets to truth, from division to unity, this family chooses love. That's our legacy now. Not the lies, not the betrayal, not the pain. Our legacy is what we chose to do with it, how we turned something broken into something whole. I couldn't speak. I just stood there, crying and looking at this beautiful representation of our complicated, wounded, healing family. "I'm going to hang it in the living room," she continued, "where everyone can see it, where my children will grow up knowing their whole history, not just the pretty parts." "Are you sure? It's so visible." "That's the point, Mama. No more hiding, no more shame. This is who we are, all of us, the good and the bad and everything in between. And I'm proud of it." Proud? Proud of how far we've come. Proud of the healing we've done. Proud that we broke the cycle and chose something different. She put her arm around me. "Proud of you, Mama, for finally telling me the truth, for being brave enough to let me know you, really know you, even the parts you were ashamed of. I should have been brave sooner. Maybe, but you were brave when it mattered. When I showed up at your door with that letter, you could have kept lying. You could have denied everything, but you didn't. You told me the truth, and that truth set us both free." She was right. That moment, that terrible, wonderful moment when I finally chose truth over lies,
had changed everything. It had been the hardest thing I'd ever done, and also the most important. Because secrets don't protect us, they imprison us, and the only way out is through the fear, through the shame, through the pain of revelation. On the other side of that pain is something I never expected to find. Freedom, connection, love that doesn't depend on pretense, a family that knows the truth and chooses each other anyway. I'm sitting on my porch as I tell you this story, watching the sun set over the bayou. The Louisiana sky is doing that thing it does in the evening, turning shades of orange and pink and purple that no painter could capture, no matter how hard they tried. The air smells like honeysuckle and the sweet olive tree my mama planted 50 years ago, still blooming, still filling the yard with fragrance. I'm 72 years old now. My hair is gray, my joints ache when the weather changes, and I can't move as fast as I used to. But my heart feels lighter than it has in decades. There's a photograph on the table beside me. The family tree painting, photographed and framed. Josephine gave it to me last Christmas, said she wanted me to have a copy so I could see it every day. I look at it often, at all those names, all those branches, all those complicated connections, at the words inscribed at the bottom. From secrets to truth, from division to unity, this family chooses love. That's who we are now, a family that chooses love. It took us so long to get here, so many years of secrets and silence, so much pain that didn't have to happen, but we made it. Against all odds, through all the hurt, we found our way to each other. And I want you to know that if we can do it, you can too. I think a lot about the choice I made to tell Josephine the truth. It wasn't really a choice in the end. Raymond's letter had already exposed everything. I couldn't have kept lying if I'd wanted to. But there was a moment, a split second, when she stood in my doorway, holding that letter, asking if it was true, when I could have denied it, could have said Raymond was confused or vindictive or simply wrong, could have built one more wall of lies and tried to keep the truth at bay. I didn't. And that choice, that tiny moment of courage, changed everything. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd told her sooner. If I'd found the strength somewhere along the way to sit her down and tell her the truth about her father. Would it have been easier? Would she have handled it better at 10, at 15, at 25? Would we have been spared those terrible months of estrangement after she found out? I don't know. I'll never know. The past is fixed, unchangeable, immune to all my second guessing. But I do know this. The right time to tell the truth is always now. Not tomorrow, not when circumstances are better, not when you think the other person is ready. Now. Because secrets have a way of coming out. They always do eventually. And when they come out on their own terms, without your control, the damage is so much worse than if you'd had the courage to speak first. Raymond's letter proved that. He told the truth from beyond the grave, and it nearly destroyed my relationship with my daughter. If I'd told her myself, in my own words, with my own context, it still would have been painful. But it would have been my truth, not his. My story to tell, not his story to impose. I gave up that chance by waiting. I gave him the power to control the narrative one last time. Don't make my mistake. Whatever secret you're carrying, whatever truth you're afraid to speak, find the courage to say it before circumstances take the choice out of your hands. I want to talk directly to the mothers for a moment. I know some of you are in situations like mine was, carrying secrets about your children's fathers, protecting your kids from truths you think will hurt them, building careful narratives to shield them from pain. I understand why you do it. I did it too for 34 years. The love behind that choice is real. The desire to protect is genuine. But let me tell you what I've learned. Protection that depends on lies isn't really protection. It's control. When we decide what truths our children can handle, we're not protecting them. We're underestimating them. We're saying we know better than they do what they need. We're treating them like fragile objects instead of capable human beings. Our children are stronger than we think. They can handle hard truths. What they can't handle, what damages them in ways that last for years, is discovering that the people they trusted most have been lying to them. That betrayal cuts deeper than any truth ever could. Josephine told me once that learning the truth about Raymond was painful, but learning that I had lied for 34 years was devastating. The truth about her father was about him. The truth about my lies was about us, about our relationship, about whether she could trust me, about whether anything I had ever told her was real. I damaged our bond in ways I never intended. I made her question everything, not just the stories about Raymond, but everything I had ever said, every reassurance, every comfort, every I love you, all of it became suspect because I'd proven I was capable of sustained, deliberate deception. That's what secrets do to relationships. They don't just hide one truth. They cast doubt on all truths. Don't do that to your children. Don't make them question everything because you were too afraid to tell them one thing. Tell them the truth. Age-appropriate truth, yes. Carefully framed truth, absolutely. But truth, nonetheless. They'll thank you for it someday, even if it hurts at first, even if they're angry, even if they need time to process. They'll thank you for trusting them with reality instead of burying them in comfortable lies. I also want to talk to those of you who are on the other side, the ones who have discovered secrets, the ones who've learned that someone they trusted has been lying to them, the ones sitting with betrayal, trying to figure out what to do next. I know how much it hurts. I know the ground feels like it's shifting beneath your feet, like nothing is stable anymore, like you can't trust your own memories because they've all been colored by lies. That feeling is real. That pain is valid. You have every right to be angry, to grieve, to need time and space to process. But I want to offer you something to consider when you're ready. Not today, maybe not for months or years, but someday, when the sharpest edges of the pain have dulled. Forgiveness is possible. Not easy, not automatic, not something you can force or fake. The person who lied to you was probably operating from fear. Fear of your judgment, fear of losing your love, fear of consequences they couldn't face. That doesn't make their lies okay. It doesn't excuse the betrayal or erase the damage, but it might help you understand it. And understanding is the first step toward forgiveness. Josephine had every right to cut me out of her life, every right to never speak to me again, to tell her children that their grandmother was a liar, to let bitterness consume our relationship. But she chose differently. She chose to try to understand. She chose to move toward healing instead of away from it. She chose forgiveness, not because I deserved it, but because she didn't want to carry the weight of unforgiveness for the rest of her life. That choice saved us. That choice made everything that came after possible. You have that choice too. Whatever secrets have been revealed, whatever lies have been exposed, you get to decide what happens next. You can let the betrayal define the relationship forever, or you can choose to work through it, to find new ground, to build something different on the ashes of what was. I'm not saying you should forgive everyone for everything. Some betrayals are too deep, some lies too damaging, some relationships too toxic to save. But if the person who lied to you is genuinely sorry, genuinely trying to change, genuinely committed to truth going forward, consider giving them a chance. Consider the possibility that the relationship might be stronger for having survived this rupture. Consider what Josephine taught me, that forgiveness is a choice you make every day, not a feeling that arrives all at once. That you can choose to move toward healing even when you're still hurt. That love can survive truth even when it couldn't survive lies. The sun has almost set now. The sky has deepened from orange to purple to the soft gray blue of twilight. Lightning bugs are starting to appear in the yard, little sparks of light dancing in the gathering darkness. Somewhere down the road, a dog is barking, and I can hear children laughing as they play some end-of-day game before being called inside. These are the sounds of ordinary life, the sounds I almost lost by letting secrets consume me. I'm grateful for every one of them now. Grateful for the chance to sit on this porch and watch the day end. Grateful for the family who will call me later to say goodnight. Grateful for the peace I finally found after so many years of turmoil. It didn't have to end this way. It almost didn't end this way. If I'd kept lying that night, if Josephine had walked away and never come back, if Angela had refused to meet me, if Marcus had never come around, if we'd all stayed trapped in our separate corners of Raymond's legacy. So many ways this story could have ended in permanent brokenness. But it didn't, because people chose differently, because truth finally prevailed, because love turned out to be stronger than fear. I want that for you too. Whatever secrets you're keeping, whatever lies you've discovered, whatever complicated family history you're navigating, I want you to find your way to peace. It's possible. I'm living proof. Let me tell you what I've learned in 72 years of making mistakes and trying to do better. Secrets are heavy. They get heavier the longer you carry them, and eventually they crush you, or they come out anyway, and the damage is worse than if you just told the truth from the beginning. Tell the truth, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Trust the people you love to handle it. They're stronger than you think. And they deserve to know the reality of their own lives, not some sanitized version you've created to protect them or yourself. Forgiveness is a choice, not a feeling. You won't always feel forgiving, but you can choose to act with grace even when your emotions are still raw. And sometimes the actions lead the feelings. Sometimes choosing forgiveness is how you eventually feel forgiven. It's never too late to change. I was 70 years old when the truth came out. 70 years old when I started therapy. 70 years old when I began the hard work of rebuilding my relationship with my daughter. If I can change at 70, you can change at whatever age you are now. And finally, love survives truth. That's the most important thing I've learned. Love that's real, love that's deep, love that's rooted in genuine connection, it survives the revelation of secrets. It might be shaken, it might be tested, but it survives. What love doesn't survive
is sustained deception. Lies erode trust, and trust is the foundation of love. Keep lying long enough and eventually there's nothing left to build on. So choose truth. Choose it even when it's scary. Choose it even when you don't know how the other person will react. Choose it because it's the only way to build relationships that last, families that heal, love that endures.